presenting a brief presentation on the study that we conducted together with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and the partners into basically undertake opportunity assessment for the development of special economic zones. This is an example of a study that, as UNIDO, we are trying to promote here in Somalia as a solution for some early stage infrastructure that, if supported, can support productive private sector development to achieve more economic opportunity in translating with jobs and prosperity for the Somali population. Not too much into the details. We understood already, was quite well presented also by the speaker this morning, their excellencies, that outline a little bit what are the selling point for doing business in Somalia. The competitiveness of the market, a market that is gradually moving and becoming more attractive for foreign enterprise or foreign actors to do business, but also a dynamic private sector that is demonstrated through proactive domestic investment that is taking place in the country, that makes it a case for foreign technology to start having a space and knowledge on how to be applied in the various needs that we identified. I will not go to the detail because I could speak also for this one quite for some time probably. I'll just like to explain how UNIDO address and support those priorities. Of course, those are priorities that require support from the side of government with policy reforms, as well as on the overall ecosystem to technical assistance, and then goes through support directly the private sector, particularly two flagship interventions, one funded by the government of Italy that actually was made possible an event like this one to the productive sector development program that enabled the network of enterprise development units hosted by the Somali Chamber of Commerce, together with the assistance of a line of credit that we operate with IBS Bank. A second flagship program that we launched last year, funded by the European Union, that is a continuation, a spin-off actually on the Italian funding project with the Chamber of Commerce, supporting the business incubator ecosystem with 3 incubators, 2 in Mogadishu, iRise and Simad iLab, and Harab in Hargeisa, that look at the more innovative part of the doing business, supporting in particular younger generation of entrepreneurs that are approaching the market in this way. Thirdly, is everything to do about skills development. So if in one part we support the government in understanding what are the priorities, on the second component we support this priority to deliver a service, the third one instead looks at in a way supporting this service to actually have relevance in the market, to understand how, what type of assistance is required in order to be able to slowly having the private sector understanding that they may need a business plan to receive a loan, or they may need adequate expertise in their enterprises to compete, whether domestically or internationally. For that, we particularly thank our partners and donors. I put one in this presentation that have made the presence of UNIDO in Somalia capable of organizing an event like this today. As I already mentioned partially in the presentation slide before, but these are some flagship initiatives in the area of supporting the government priority, private sector, as I mentioned, supporting enterprise development units, or the business incubator ecosystem, the component of access to finance without a line of credit, and finally some more innovative intervention like the one that was actually mentioned quite some couple of times already during the intervention this morning with the partnership with Galoga and Case New Holland. That was a private sector-led initiative that evolved into Case New Holland Galoga Academy for supporting TVET initiative in the agro-mechanization sector. And a recent initiative in the water desalination space where actually we are installing and piloting an initiative for purifying salty water from a borehole and then given for productive use in a community in Puntland. This is actually the plan is to use European technology, particularly probably Italian technology, that then will be applied for producing this desalinized and pure water that then will be utilized for productive use. The job of UNIDO here is piloting the technology as well as incubating the business enterprise that will be a blend between private sector and private sector to operate and sustaining the operation beyond the duration of the UNIDO presence in the project. I mentioned before, my presentation today actually wanted to launch give an understanding of a study that UNIDO undertook with the Minister of Commerce and Industry between 2021 and 2022 in mapping opportunities for the development of special economic zones. All of you in your tote bag, you will have a QR code. You will be able actually to download the report. The executive report is available for the public to study and learn a little bit more. So what I will do here is mainly provide you a very quick and general overview, and not to take much time from your lunch, actually. The support this is a direct support that UNIDO provides to the Ministry of Commerce and Industry as part of the Productive Sector Development Program. What we did is simply trying to understand what are areas across Somalia that when identified, can and supported through some kind of infrastructure in the productive sector, for example, energy, lending, zoning, land preparations, as simple as that, or as well as some additional level of services like chilling solution or storage solution for food or logistic platforms for improving or addressing a specific need of an enterprise. If supported, can then make it easier for an enterprise to do business and reducing their cost of operations. This is a typical solution that across another African country has been identified that in Somalia is yet to be deployed. It's very typical, particularly between the 80s and 90s, for example, in Ethiopia, that has made great use of this tool of the special economic zone or industrial zone to develop their economy and be a driver for economic growth. The system is quite actually a simple solution, and there are many models that can be applied, from a more federal structure of coordination or a much more decentralized approach where the state government actually can manage the process. The solution that we identified in UNIDO actually is a blend of the two, where we have a policy role of the federal government, then decentralized at the federal member level, at the member state level, to promote and engage with the private sector. And this constant circulation of engagement with the private sector that you see in the graphic there, that constantly trying to keep informed the project and the engagement that is required to make the project successful at the end. Just very briefly, and not bother you too much text, special economic zones, the definition is changed depending on the country. There's a generic definition that we can define as a space, a land-defined area that is then allocated for private sector to do business. As simple as that. We can complicate it even further by adding the component of legislation and tax-free. That is becoming most likely a free zones or a free economic zones related to the component of taxation. But that type of zones consider an element also of specifically designed for trading purposes. So factory that is only producing for the export market. If instead we are trying to demonstrate a project that try to drive economic activity and drive investment, at least to stimulate a domestic economy, an approach much more simpler that put together basic infrastructure that are of need to the private sector is enough. And this is probably the gradual step that in our engagement with the partners in Somalia and the private sector, the government we identify as the ideal solution in the interim. In our approach, in the study, we actually had look exactly at locations that are already existing based on the current economic activity. So we identified what are the economic output of these areas, what are the competitive advantages in terms of value addition and activity that is already, and production activity that is already happening on the ground as of today, without infrastructure, or without additional element infrastructure or definition of special economic zones, and what is the private sector presence. Also understanding what are the economic activity already happening. So we did a basic analysis of what is happening already today, and what could happen if investment is generated, if investment is taking place in a specific location. And let's leave the helicopter alone. Let's see if the helicopter leaves us a moment because the ground shakes. What happens if additional investment are triggered to the economy that is already existing? So without considering additional investment from overseas, or without considering additional special ad hoc technical assistance, but just looking at the situation today. And some quite interesting dynamics and is already in place, particularly this economic corridor, for example, that goes from Mogadishu to Badoa to Belatuen and towards the border, or from Bosaso, Garoe, again, towards the border with Ethiopia, the so-called economic corridor, or more commonly, trade routes. Commonly is a more modern definition of naming something that already existed as a simple trade route. Around this trade route, there are some economic activity, some economic hub that is already taking place that eventually requires support. The prioritization then at this point is what actually we did with the study, and this is an example of opportunities that were identified. Of course, the study will contain more details. I'm trying to give you an overarching vision of what you will be able to see from the report that all of you can download from the QR code in your bike. These are a selection actually of 9 special economic zones that were identified. In the study, we actually went a little bit more into details, identifying additional 3 of them within those 9 that are a little bit the low-hanging fruit, with some level of investment spanning between $5 million actually to $12 million of infrastructure that, if supported, can generate enough level of productivity for, on average, between 50 to 60 SMEs per industrial zones or per special economic zones. So we have actually quite a number of these locations in the area of Mogadishu, of course, because identified being one of the main starting points, or different actually, of those trade routes that you see in this slide, as well as the typical non-location like Belatuen, Baidoa, or Bosaso, or Garoe, that are already at some degree considered economic hub for the common knowledge in Somalia, but can actually become even more important if consideration of these kinds are undertaken. This is what we're proposing here, is simply a change of narrative and a better analysis on how investment in those specific locations should be triggered, without creating too much limitation on the definition, but keeping the definition wide enough to at least start attracting enough that investment that are required to see some positive change in the private sector. And this is what I was trying to explain in a simple map. From Mogadishu all the way to the border with Dolo, passing via through Baidoa. This is one of the trade routes that actually that we have analyzed in this report, where one special economic zone is considered being developed in Baidoa. This is actually the easiest one to develop, because we are talking about a simply agro-processing and logistic hub that would, in a way, provide a service that is identified as lacking in economic activity in Baidoa, specifically related to chilling and cooling or storage of agro-food commodities that are widely produced in the area around Baidoa, between southwest state and the border with Shabelle, and towards then the border with Ethiopia. And in this particular location, actually, the fishery industrial zone in Mogadishu actually is considered a food processing also in Mogadishu, and another cross-border logistics at the border with Dolo, on top of the location in Baidoa that the study will be able to give you a little bit more information about. I'll stop here, and I would like to thank you actually for the listening and for coming to the Somali Economic Conference. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Aad iyo aad u mahadsan yahay.